Going on, everybody? Good to see you. A little after 11, President's Day 2025. Mark Sudduth with you, in case you didn't know. Hope you had a good weekend. Figured I'd jump in and take a look at the weather for the week ahead. Been kind of busy these last few weeks with winter storm stuff myself. Just got back. I say just got back. I mean, seems like I'm always traveling either with weather stuff or for my son for soccer. He plays travel ball, as they say. We also did some basketball this weekend up in Charlotte. But yeah, last week I was up in the DC area and the Delmarva, as they call it. And that was an interesting snowstorm. Never been up there for a snowstorm. And we had anywhere from 4 to 6 inches, depending on where you were. And I traveled all over the area from Silver Spring to Fredericksburg and back, ending up in the downtown area, National Mall. Is there really a downtown DC? I don't think so. It's different. But you know what I mean, the area where all the monuments and the Capitol is and all that stuff. And it was really, really neat to see Washington in a snowstorm. And I took some 360 video, showed a little bit of that on Fox Weather this past Friday. And in my afternoon update that I'll do later today, I'll run through some of that 360 video. We're going to do a lot more with that, especially during severe weather and hurricane season. But the thing that I'm really waiting for, and this will be sort of the cornerstone of today's discussion, because we all thought, well, most of us, I say thought, we were hoping, I know I certainly was, that this storm that's coming up, that's starting its genesis right now over the Plains states, and I'll get into it and show you in a minute. This is my monologue, my setup. I really want a big nor'easter so that I can take the 360 cam up to places like Scituate. Actually, we have several 360 cams and Marshfield, because we have people up there that let us use their properties to mount our cameras on. And we've always had the sort of flat one perspective live shots from up there, and even put some GoPros up there dating back to 2018, the very first time I went to Eastern Massachusetts, outside of the Cape anyway. There's the Cape, and then you have Eastern Mass. Um, but I'd really like to get up there and put these 360 cams out for when you get Cape Cod Bay all roiled up, because I just think that would be amazing. And I thought, this really looks like this could be a solid nor'easter. And alas, it has trended more flat. So I'll be snow chasing, it looks like, right in my backyard. Not quite literally, but certainly the Carolina coastal plain and North Carolina this time. Looks like South Carolina is going to be completely left out of any wintry precip. Maybe in the upstate, we'll see. But yeah, so that's figure that'll be the big part of what I talk about today. All right. So it's been a bit since I've done this. Let's get to the screen sharing. There's the old title of the week ahead. And oh yeah, we got to turn. I have to unshare for a second because I have to get the telestrator running. And in order for Zoom to capture everything, everything has to be running for it to capture everything. All right, does that make any sense? Maybe. There we go. As long as it works, that's all I care about. Shift some toolbars around, draw an oval to make sure we're good. So yeah, the week ahead and weather. Starting off today, though, we see these blues, and then you get this weird green color farther to the south. All of that is your extreme cold that's dipping in this little lobe of the stratospheric polar vortex. That old vortex up there rotates around way up north, and pieces of it dip down into the lower 48, and you get the cold air advection draining right out of the Canadian prairies. Sometimes you get that cross polar flow. I'm trying to draw 3 dimensions sort of on a flat screen, but you drain that cold air down into the lower 48. And again, I've said it before, when you see extreme cold warnings, especially for the northern tier states up here where they are used to it, that is really saying something. And that's dangerous cold for sure. But this is an active winter weather map, very typical. All the colors of the blues and grays and pinks that you'll see. That's all your winter weather stuff, definitely. Winter storm warnings for areas along the Pacific Northwest, the Rockies, and then you have extreme cold here. Winter storm warnings here for parts of the Midwest. And then this is really problematic through here. And I think flooding still doesn't get as much attention as it should from people. The severe weather, you get a moderate risk somewhere, an enhanced risk, or a high risk, and everybody loses their minds. And the other day, we had a high risk of flooding, something like right through here. And I certainly talked about it and pointed it out. And, that's just me, one guy, but we need everybody to pay attention to stuff like that because we've had loss of life here in Kentucky with pretty bad flooding once again. And a lot of that, I've talked about this many times, is because of the very warm Gulf, and that helps to feed the storm system as they come across. And so your precipitable water, your PWatt values are just higher. It's pretty simple to understand that the anomalies down here in the Gulf are such that it's not surprising. But that doesn't help people, okay? Whether we're surprised or not, it's still very problematic. And if we just click on Kentucky, for example, and you notice all of these polygons that are bordering and following rivers, it looks like little pieces of like tape that you've stuck down or whatever. Well, those are the actual flood warnings along river systems. So our good friends in Kentucky are is that still the bluegrass state? I think it is. But very seriously here, it's a problem, and they're really hurting some of them from flooding once again. And now it's bitterly cold. Yuck. So the weather's still definitely a big headline for the lower 48. And reflecting on last week, we had the heavy rain out in southern Cal, mud flows, and saw that one patrol car that got washed out down to the beach. Luckily, the officer was safe. That was good. And then finally got some rain in Vegas, where 214 days went by between precip. How about that? Anyway, then we have blizzard warnings up here in parts of the Appalachians where a storm system is coming through. And you can see the radar. We'll just click on this kind of stream of consciousness stuff. And again, that's what these discussions, this is what I would look at, even without an audience. But there's some precip coming off the lakes there, or especially Lake Erie, anyway. And so downwind of that, you're getting some uh, pretty low visibilities and steady snow. So you got blizzard warnings straddling just this narrow area, then lake effect snow. Hey, I saw a picture on the Twitter earlier from, and I think it's Altmar or Almar. Maybe the T is silent. Altmar. I've always called it Altmar, but that just can't be that simple, right? It's probably Almar. Anyway, uh, they couldn't like get out. They couldn't open their door. Like there was so much snow coming off of Ontario. Almar is between Syracuse and Watertown, kind of like somewhere in here, if I remember correctly. I've been there. I've stayed at that Hilton property they've got there, that Tapestry, the Lodge or something like that. It is gorgeous up there. The thing's called the Salmon River. Anyway, I digress. Look, a snow squall warning in that purple. So it's just a busy, busy day already for the week ahead, right? And looking at more lake effect snow coming off of Ontario, which, by the way, I follow an account on the Twitter there for lake ice coverage, and Ontario up here is at about 14%. I do remember seeing that ice coverage, and most of the ice is like over here on the east side. Um, Erie is much more ice covered for whatever reason. Ontario's deeper, I know that. But anyway, so yeah, pretty active start to the week weather-wise. And look at the some of the other lakes up here, Superior in Michigan, with this interesting sort of cyan color, heavy freezing spray. No, thank you. And then just look at this radar. I mean, come on. If it'll load, let's go. Look at these showers, and these are snow showers coming off Lake Michigan, and that's moving in from west to east here. Just winter is the groundhog got this one right. We'll just say that. All right, we'll chalk it up to old Puxatawney Phil. Nailed it. They say that the Euro nailed Sandy. Well, Puxatawny Phil nailed the winter. And then we have storm warnings along the coast up here of New England, high wind warnings for interior areas. Just not, it's just a cold, bitter, wintry day. I mean, clearly, right? And hey, it's February the 17th, so there should be no surprise, I suppose. All right, so let's just look at a few headlines real quick. A couple things. Actually, we'll just do one. I touched upon some others. This is a story from Fox Weather. Um, the death toll rises in Kentucky as the waterlogged Tennessee Valley. I mean, they really got hit hard. There's different drone shots, of course, and that flooding is just it's a real big problem in this country as of late. These last 5 years or so, really going back 8 years from Harvey to now, just looking at that chunk of time. I mean, my goodness. So, we have to take that seriously when we see these high risk days, moderate risk days of flooding. All right, let me drop the screen share just for a minute and jump over on the web and see what's happening on the YouTube chat. Um, Welcome to everybody, by the way. Let me pause the actual playback there. Who do we got? Who do we have? All right, we have Will Woodgate from over beyond the big pond in the UK. Good to see you, Brad, from the Outer Banks. And Sony Toprano. I love that anagram kind of deal of mixing names around. Delaware Steve, how's the back today, Steve? Always wondering about that, man. I feel for you. I see your post on Facebook. Hopefully, I'm not doxing you too bad there by bringing that up. But he's a long time. Steve's the reason I got into winter weather professionally back in 2014. He was really suggesting outside of hurricane season that I do something in winter weather. Known him a long time. We got Blue Goose and Nadine down there in Southeast Georgia, and JM, J Will, and Franco and Jessica. Hey, Jessica, how you guys doing down there? Go Duke! Right after that Clemson loss, it seems to have gotten things back together, so that's good. You and James should be quite happy about that. I know he will be. And Thomas from the Panhandle of Florida. You still got any snow down there in the Panhandle? Probably not. I'm just kidding. But anyway, hello everybody. Good to see you, and I appreciate you stopping by. Let's get back to the sharing of the screen, and if I can figure out how to do it. Coming up on 5 years of this learning how to do Zoom, right? Which, by the way, let me unshare for just a second. The irony of this storm coming up, because it is looking, spoiler alert, like it's just going to be North Carolina and Virginia that really cash in on the snow. A very similar setup in terms of the end game occurred 5 years ago, almost this week. I got to go back and look through my archives, but I remember, and I don't want to drag the room down, but I remember 5 years ago, even in January, I heard a lot about this COVID-19 thing that was coming out of China, and it was just escalating and escalating. And I remember when I went out to Eastern North Carolina, Northeast North Carolina, which I'm probably going to do starting tomorrow for another storm 5 years later. It just reminds me of that because I had driven out to Elizabeth City and stayed in Elizabeth City for this snowstorm. We had 4, 5, 6 inches, depending on where you were. And I remember driving out there listening to a podcast episode as I was driving. It was about an hour-long episode from a guy in New Orleans, Harry Shearer, the voice actor, and he's Saturday Night Live, I think 85 or something like that. Harry Shearer, the guy from he was in Godzilla, the one with Matthew Broderick, and he was in the Truman Show and Spinal Tap. That's Harry Shearer. Anyway, he's got a podcast in like a public radio show called Les Show, and he had some expert on. This was in late February, mid to late February, 2020, and the whole hour was about this coronavirus, and it was very educational, and because I wanted to learn about it, I think we all did in the early part, and then it got crazy, as we all know. and that was the downside. But I started thinking about it when I was looking at this storm and where I'm going to end up. I'm like, because we do have this sort of H5N1 thing, and it's like, all right. And anyway, it's funny how sometimes things seem to circle back around, and you just hope that we're not doing it all over again. Because I was headed out there 5 years ago, right around this time, and the guy was absolutely right. That's all I'll say. The dude that was on predicted what was going to happen, and here we are. Anyway, that was 5 years ago. So hopefully that's where the parallel will end. So let me just stick to this, shall we? Yes, we shall. All right. So I already covered that. Let's do this. Let's go back to, yeah, I knew where I wanted to go. I derailed everything by my little story there, but it reminded me of that 5 years ago where I was headed to Eastern North Carolina. And the reason that I'm thinking about it again is because way back on Thursday into Friday of last week, does seem like an eternity ago in weather world, right? We were looking at this. This is the Euro last Thursday night, so the 0Z run into Friday, and this is what we were looking at. And we were like, whoa, yes, if you like snow. Now, some people don't like the snow, and that's quite all right. All right. Um, so this was the deal on the Euro, and everybody calls it King Euro. And there's a few pieces you can see even on this particular map. Pretty good upper level energy sitting back here. You can just tell by the thicknesses and the surface reflection over the Pamlico and Albemarle sounds of the surface low, throwing back the moisture into the Delmarva region and beyond. And we were all thinking like, all right. Now that was 156 hours out from that initialization last Thursday night. And so the caveats were all there, you know, all right, well, we'll have to wait and see. All the pieces have to line up. And then the storm went up the coast, and then it started to fade out to the east, to where it would still, even that, would bring a sizable nor'easter impact to the mid-Atlantic and parts of New England. And I was thinking at that time I might head up to eastern Massachusetts to get my 360 shot in Marshfield and Scituate. I was like, oh, maybe I'll fly up there because that's really my goal. I really want to do that. So we went from that, right, to, and there it was just to replay it again. We are like, oh, yeah, especially right here through the Delmarva. Like, really? And I know Delaware Steve, you're probably seeing this and thinking the Hallelujah chorus should play. So, what happened? Well, time happened. That's what happened. Time. There was a lot of time for stuff to go wrong, so to speak, if you like snow, and for the storm to be more suppressed. And that's the problem with these things. It's all mathematics and physics and whatever. And the models just don't quote unquote know 150 hours out, or sometimes 80 hours out, or sometimes 24 hours out. So we turn to some really smart people out there, at least I like to, that know more than me on certain things, and I know more than them on others. It just depends. But I think we can all agree Eric Webb is on top of this stuff, and I love his analysis. So why has the midweek storm been trending south? And then I would add the word in here as well, and also trying to draw an F, flat, south and flat, more suppressed. And the answer is this is a classic case we've seen play out several times this winter where a chunk of the tropospheric polar vortex is sliding underneath a blocking ridge to the north. And that's what this graphic is showing. So the polar vortex sliding on in with blocking high pressure up to the north, so it can at least get it in there, get the energy and the cold air down into the lower 48. We've seen it over and over, as he said, all right? Contrary to popular belief, these systems usually don't like to play nice, and via experience, phasing with one of them actually will more times than not suppress the storm track more than you think. It's kind of like that Mandela effect that we all think we remember something one way, but it's actually not true. You just remember it wrong. It's a whole thing. Google it, the Mandela effect. And that's the case with the winter storms. You think you see it and you go, oh, I know that pattern. We're going to get a big nor'easter. And then you don't. Like they are exceedingly rare, these really big storms, like I just showed you from the Euro. Also, intense low-level air masses like the one that trails in this system's wake love to sink southward a little faster than forecast, east of the Rockies, and often they aren't handled terribly well by the coarser, and that's important, global models to the right. And this is a great example of that thick, massive cold air mass. And that really is the key. The cold air sort of gets in first and kind of slides everything to the south because you got to remember, you got to visualize the atmosphere as a fluid, and you have to have everything line up right with all the little pieces of vorticity. And if you get that cold, dense air to kind of slide in and squash, and you could probably visualize this if you had like a little kiddie pool, and you could get like some really warm water in there, and then get some cold water in a bucket that had like green or bright blue dye in it or something. And you pour that into that warm water and watch all the different eddies and little pieces of vorticity around there. And you could dump another bucket of water on the other side and just watch how everything interacts. That's the atmosphere. And we can't model it that well 150 hours out, especially when you're talking about a massive area of dense, cold air that's draining down into the lower 48. So the bottom line, we're going to get robbed of this beauty right here. And instead, it's going to be much more flat and to the south, which I'll show you. All right, another person that I like to follow, and if you guys are up there in the DC area, you know Mike Thomas, right? Yep. Um, he's been on this because he was hoping for it like we all were. Well, most of us. I don't want to speak for everybody. Some people absolutely detest winter and cold and snow, and you're right. That's fine. I think it's really neat. It's just the kid in me, and meteorologically, it's cool to follow and what have you. But he's going to do a bigger thread. If you're not already following Mike Thomas, you should. I've already learned a lot just by following him as of late this winter. Anyway, he says, I'll get a thread written up later today about what I believe may have gone wrong. The Western energy flattening the wave, weaker amplification in the east, some of the culprits, and then subtle 500 millibar changes. That's up at about where most of the airplanes fly, roughly. Changes at that level lead to big changes at the surface, but major changes at 500 millibars lead to huge surface shifts, which makes sense. Everything is connected, and the result is we're just not going to get what we were hoping for. Here's just I saw this pop up on the algorithm side of my Twitter today. Dr. Wall here, the Euro 5 run trend. It's just south and flatter overall. And folks in the RDU area, you were looking forward to it. Not looking good. And in fact, if it keeps going, we're going to have some wintry precip down in Wilmington where I am. So yeah, so let's look at some specifics here. This is out of the National Weather Service Wakefield. I was hoping to show you a National Weather Service Taunton, Boston area, and maybe Atlantic City or something, or Mount Holly to be specific. But instead, I'll be showing you, Chesapeake area, Tidewater Weather Service tweets. And I looked at some stuff out of Morehead City, but it doesn't look like this is going to be far enough south yet. So this is out of National Weather Service Wakefield, which is generally in the Norfolk area. Potential for significant winter storm. We know all that, but this is the early forecast from them for snow. We all like to look at the snow totals. I mean, we really are starting to confine it now to the coast. And if it gets any more flat, it really will be very similar to what I was saying about 2020, where we had a decent little snowstorm right through this stretch here. And like I told you, I was there for it. And I got back, and 2 weeks later, everything went to the toilet. So that's how that story gets connected. All right. So let's look at it on the GFS now. This is the 12Z run. Let me refresh this because we got plenty of frames to show you. So we'll look at the GFS and we'll look at the Euro. This is the surface map anyway. So some of the pieces we can already identify. There's your 1047 millibar chunk of Arctic air coming down with that polar vortex. And look, you can even see the outline of it on these isobars here. And I think that's what's so neat about meteorology is sometimes you can just see the shape of the atmosphere if you know how to look at it. It's like reading music. People that can sight read music, I used to do it a little bit way back when I was in music school. And then I switched over to geography and weather, but that's also a story for another day. But like reading music, some people can just plop it up and off they go. And with meteorology, a lot of it I can do the same. Some of it I still can't, but a lot of it I can. And you can just see through all this and see the shape of this big Arctic air mass coming down. And that's exactly what's happening. It's just sliding down out of the Canadian prairies. And there's your Arctic front right here. And that's going to drain in that bitter cold. And so what happens is we get the winter storm first, the genesis of it in Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, parts of the Red River, and then crossing into Arkansas, Missouri. That's going to be a good storm out there, by the way. Jordan Overton, my friend up at Fox Weather, saying I believe his folks live in northeast Oklahoma, somewhere around here. You could get close to blizzard conditions. Look at those isobars packed in there. You know what that means when you see that, right? Come on, that's a tight pressure gradient. Yes, and look at that, 1055 millibar high in parts of North Dakota, Canada, and Montana. It's not the tri-state area because you got another country up there, but you get what I'm saying. The tri-border area, 1055 millibar high up there, and you got a surface low trying to form down here somewhere in that tight pressure gradient. That's going to be something else. Any of the chasers, they're going to be out there doing that. Um, that's funny. Jordan just texted me from Fox. Dude, I just mentioned you on my YouTube live, LOL. Then you text me, period. That's pretty wild, period. Yep, Jordan just that's funny. He's working. He's at Fox Weather right now. Anyway, that's just irony. His ears must have been burning, as they say. Any of the chasers out here, that's going to be some interesting snow chases to watch on some live streams across parts of the Ozarks. And my friend Deborah Clifton in Cape Girardeau, I know she doesn't like this kind of weather. She likes to be down in Gulf Shores with it about 88 degrees and sunny. That's her favorite, I think. All right, so 12 ZGFS, and this is the first I'm seeing of it. We'll see it together. So this is Wednesday afternoon, and I mean, look, now the low is down here in the northeastern Gulf. Like we're not popping the low off here like a little Miller B type deal that's going to come up the coast like that. Nope. I shouldn't laugh because I wanted a big snowstorm myself, but wah wah. I mean, you do transfer some of the energy up here, but still, that's a lot flatter. And you can just see it's really easy just on this map to see how flat this is. It's not all amped up, and we can even look at the GFS going back to last Friday at what it was now. It was pretty flat here, but then it did finally tighten it up, but it was more offshore. But unlike the euro, which really latched onto this early and then has had to let go, this is one of those cases where the euro is caving to the GFS in the longer range. But that is a flat system. But I don't want to diminish the fact that, yes, our friends down here in the Tidewater area are going to get some pretty good snow, definitely. But then the other part is this pinkish color through here, an ice storm, potentially. Let's zoom in and look, right even down to my neck of the woods, really close. This could lead to some power outages through here. So Greenville, where my daughter goes to East Carolina University, that could be a big problem. So let's back this up just a little bit and examine this one piece at a time. So this is overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, some icing possibilities in southern Arkansas. And I bring up the ice because that really is the worst of winter weather. I get the most traffic accidents, the power outages, so forth and so on. So yeah, some icing in southern Arkansas, almost to northern Louisiana. And then that all slides east. This is Wednesday morning. Most of Tennessee. I know James Pettis will be excited about that. Covered in some snow. But then that pink starts to show up in the sand hills here and into the coastal plain of North Carolina that cold air in place. And then a little bit more to the north, you do get the snow. And then it starts to crank up as the surface low takes shape right there off of Hatteras and Lookout. I got something in my eye. And that'll, bring in some of that northeast wind and pretty darn heavy snow there. I know Jesse Bass, he's hoping we get that little bullseye. Can you see it? Does it come through enough? Just up here into Portsmouth, where he lives. My good friend and colleague Jesse, he and I go all the way back to the late 90s. Anyway, and then Delaware Steve, there's Delaware. Steve, you just got to move to a bigger state. If you had a bigger state, you'd have more real estate that could be impacted by snow. Obviously, I'm just joking there, but you'll get a little bit of snow, Steve, maybe. I think you're a little bit farther to the north, though, so you might get left out in the Newcastle area. Ah, so that's going to be a good snowstorm, though, for North Carolina, including the mountains, and certainly Southeast Virginia. Um, just looking between the frames here, and then it heads offshore overnight Wednesday into Thursday, and then some of the upper level energy swings through with a few more snow showers. So unfortunately, as we broaden this back out, it's not going to end up coming up the coast. In fact, on this run, nada for New England and Long Island and Manhattan, whatever. Fox weather, sorry, you're left out. So what happened? It's flatter, and you can even see, even here with the thicknesses, this just shows me the upper atmosphere. This is all just not as amplified. You're not digging that trough down to really yank that low up the coast and have that big baroclinic forcing that gets you those coastal storms. It's just not there. And that's the way it goes this time around, unfortunately. So we went from that to that. Yeah, it's the way it goes. All right, good news here before I wrap things up. And we're going to jump on the chat again on YouTube, see what you guys are talking about. No severe weather to really worry about until tomorrow. And this doesn't even worry about it too much, just marginal along the Gulf Coast there of Texas and Louisiana. But really, look at the threat. It's like 2% in the marshes, wind, hail. So yes, there are going to be some thunderstorms, but pay attention, but it's not too problematic, all right? Not a big widespread event. And the just general convection. And I'm going to show you on the update this afternoon that the Gulf is way warmer. In fact, again, it is just going to shock you when I show you the anomalies down there. So it's no surprise that some of that instability will lead to some thunderstorms across these areas today and tomorrow. And again, it brought that flooding, that very high precipitable water from the very warm Gulf. No surprise there. All right, let's drop the sharing and jump over to the YouTube chat. Well, hey, Sony Taprano, thanks for the $1.99, man. I appreciate that. A nice little surprise for you. Of the tip jar, it made a little ding sound. So really, thank you. What's everybody else talking about? Let's see. What do we got? Backing it up just a little bit. Why would you hope for a storm and all the damage and possible loss of life? That is a great question. Well, just general rain that we all need can cause problems and loss of life, but we don't wish for that. And I don't have anything to do with it. Like I don't cause it. So I think, I don't know how to explain it. I think awareness and education that people, okay, if you don't want to be out in it, stay home and you should be fine. But that is an age-old question. Why would anybody want adverse weather? But that's also like asking when you watch like the Super Bowl, which we just had, or a big college basketball matchup or NBA, whatever, why would you want anybody to lose? Because you are watching, somebody has to end up a loser in any of those scenarios. I just went to a basketball tournament with my son in Charlotte. They won the first game by like 20 points, and they lost the second game by 20 points. And they were pretty heartbroken. Somebody has to lose. And the same thing with the weather. There's going to be your winners, the people that really like to see something interesting. Maybe they want to photograph it. They just have that kid in them that likes a good snowstorm. I don't know. Then you're going to have the loser side, the winners and losers. of flight delays, headaches from that, to travel problems on the ground, to simple things like packages not getting delivered. So Will poses, I'm just shortening it, a very good question. And psychologically, we don't have good answers for you. Because none of us on here that I know of wish for bad things to happen to people. But it just comes with the territory sometimes that when you have a big storm coming, you're going to have the bad consequences. And so I think awareness is very important. I'll just leave it at that. All right. What else we got? Oh yeah, I got to get the arrow to slide down for me. Come on. Let's go. Um, Squirrel, right, Jessica from earlier. Squirrel. Yes, I can get sidetracked. All right. Oh, we have pollen, KP1 down there. Really, the pollen's already out in Florida, huh? Hey, I have seen some of our trees and bushes around southeast North Carolina start to flower. So after this, we're going to get some freezing temperatures. But after this, hopefully it'll warm up and stay that way towards spring, because we are starting to get towards where stuff's starting to bud and flower. When we start talking about the upcoming hurricane season. All right, so Thomas, I will address some of that in today's update, the one that I do in the afternoon, where it's not live and everything's more concise and there's no long stories about Mark figuring out that COVID's coming. That was earlier in today's live update. But yes, Thomas, I will address that because we are closing in on, we're not quite at 100 days until hurricane season, but we're getting close. And we got to start talking about it a little bit more on the line of, all right, what do we need to be watching for patterns? I'm not going to worry about the numbers as much. I think that's a disservice. I'm going to talk about that probably more in March, but more about patterns. Let's see if we can start some pattern recognition going instead of worrying about the overall numbers. We'll still talk about them because they're important, but I also want to look at upcoming patterns, MJO, to just local convectively coupled Kelvin waves, that kind of stuff, and who to rely on to find those kinds of patterns. And we'll focus on that pretty soon. All right. So great question. Great question. All right. 6 millibar step standard in the ISO lines. On that particular version of the GFS, and you can think about it like contour intervals on a USGS map, I believe it's a matter of what the plot is and what the raw data is, but I do believe that in that particular situation, 6 millibar contour intervals, basically is another way to look at it, is standard. I have to reach out to Dr. Cowan and ask him when he coded that up, is that just what it is inside the actual raw data? That's a great question, though. Somebody picking that out. That's good. You're welcome. That's like looking at the sheet music that I was saying earlier. All right, let me get back over to where I can sign out of this in just a moment and let you guys go about your Monday. So we'll be watching the storm. I'm heading out tomorrow afternoon. I'll go up to probably, I don't know, northeast North Carolina. I think it's going to sink south just a little bit more. That's my gut feeling, which will really irritate Jesse because he likes a good snowstorm. But either way, I'll either be in Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina. That's what I was texting Mr. Overton about there at Fox Weather. Well, we'll cover it. We'll have the YouTube live going and probably put out a camera or two. I didn't put any cameras out in the DC area for the last storm. I mean, come on. There's just no way I'm going to be able to walk up to some light pole somewhere, anywhere in the DC area, and put a yellow box on it and then walk away without having knock, 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 right? Or whatever, or then it's going to be on the news anyway. So that's why I didn't put any cameras out up there. One does not, I said this on Fox, I was like, one does not simply just put yellow boxes on things in and around the nation's capital. That is a big no-no, but I can do that in rural eastern North Carolina. They have little stickers on there that says what they are, but nevertheless, no, I was the camera guy for that last storm. But I got areas in eastern North Carolina where I know I can put cameras out. It'll be neat to watch this storm unfold. We'll start doing that sometime on Tuesday into Wednesday. All right, exit that. And then I am going to kill my video. We'll end on the title screen. And I'll say my goodbye. So look, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Again, I like to do this once in a while, just to, what is Mark looking at? What's Mark thinking? And that's it. That's what I'm thinking and looking at for today and the week ahead. So bundle up out there. We got to get through one more lobe of this polar vortex, and then hopefully Puxatawny Phil can cut us a break, and we can finally get to spring when spring is officially due the third week of March. We shall see. All right. Have a good rest of your morning and afternoon once it gets here, and I'll have my afternoon update for you probably in the 3 o'clock hour today. All right. I'm Mark Sudduth. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time around.